I had no idea what the day would bring as I cared for the roses in my garden that morning. I had just planted seedlings and was now with my hands in the dirt, making sure each one had a good footing. Up until a sudden excruciating pain erupted through my back, everything was calm and routine. My step-nephew Taylor's coincidental presence only added to my confusion about what was about to happen. I had always found solace and refuge in my garden. It was the one spot that helped my broken spirit recover from the death of my spouse, Grant. Yet on that particular day a shift occurred. People frequently asked me, "Nora, how do you look so youthful at your age?" Even though I was 67 years old. The truth is that there was no major cover-up. I simply made sure to take care of myself by eating right, exercising regularly, and resolving to never let go of the inner girl. The truth is, though, that I had let myself become hopelessly lonely. Even though I was still beautiful on the outside, I couldn't escape the emptiness that consumed me. A sharp pain shot through my back as I was putting one of the seedlings in its proper spot. I let go of every object I was clutching because of how sudden and unexpected it was. I tried to breathe through the agony by closing my eyes for a brief period, but it made no difference. I was paralyzed with pain as it traveled down my back and across my shoulder. Suddenly, I heard Nora's voice asking, "Are you okay?" It was Taylor. At 22 years old, my step-nephew Taylor has a physique that would land him on the cover of a fitness magazine, broad shoulders and a strong build. In the sunshine, his blonde hair glistened, and his worried, penetrating eyes were fixed on me. He seemed oblivious to his own inherent charisma, yet it drew admirers wherever he went. It seemed as if all that youthful vitality had suddenly shifted to serve me. "This is my rear." I managed to mutter something while indicating the area of my body that hurt the most. "There's a problem." "Oh my, I'm frozen. Will you be able to handle this?" Reason being, this isn't your average tale. On this path, limits dissolve, feelings entangle, and admissions echo like unspoken cries for help. You never know when something deep within you will be stirred, testing the boundaries of your knowledge. If you like this tale and would like to support me, please subscribe to my channel and enable notifications. Next to me, Taylor knelt down. "Allow me to assist you," he pleaded. A shudder went through me uncontrollably the second his large hands touched my shoulders. He went on to say that he would massage you since it helped most people. I would have done anything to alleviate the agony. I lacked the strength to object. What took me by surprise, though, was the impact of his touch. Taylor gently pressed his palms against my back. This level of intimacy had not been felt by me in a long time, I must confess. Despite their strength, his fingers were surprisingly delicate. The soreness melted away as they worked their magic on my knotted muscles, and I felt an unfamiliar warmth course through my body. The solitary woman within me seemed to have been roused from her slumber. Perhaps a touch too deeply, I exhaled. "Hey Taylor." What I wanted to say became stuck in my throat. The task was too much for me to complete. In addition to without saying a word, he continued massaging me while his fingers moved over my back in a manner that made me very aware of his actions. At that same second I sensed a change. Unexpectedly, it frightened me and thrilled me at the same time. In a slow, methodical motion, Taylor continued running his hands over my back until he halted and drew forward to gaze at me. "Hey Nora, this is really bad," he exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine worry. "This is too big for us to tackle in the garden. Bring you inside where there's a fireplace. I will get some lotion to massage into your back, and the heat will assist. This needs our immediate attention." The agony ultimately decided it for me after a brief moment of hesitation. After I gave him the signal, he got me up on my feet. "Take it easy," he warned me as his powerful hands held me up. His embrace brought a strange solace, a sense of intimacy I hadn't had in a long time. The room was bathed in a warm golden light as we entered, thanks to the crackling fire. The warmth enveloped me like a cloak, immediately reducing some of the stress in my body. I was motioned by Taylor to lie down, and he hurriedly spread a blanket on the floor. He remarked, his voice gravelly and little hesitant, that you should find a more comfortable posture to stretch out your back. Loosen the muscles with the help of this cream I have on hand. Laying down, I felt the heat of the fire envelop me while Taylor warmed the cream by rubbing it between his palms. I unconsciously released a breath as soon as his hands touched my shoulders for the first time. "Calm down," he whispered, "you'll be okay." Soon. Although I was in bodily discomfort, his touches were alleviating more than that. Something that I had long since buried was being stirred up inside of me by it. My mind was both more organized and more disorganized as he ran his fingertips down my back. The healing and awareness that came from Taylor's touch went beyond that. Inside, I paused for a second before accepting. The agony was too great. As I stumbled to my feet, Taylor reached out and gently grasped my arm. "Proceed cautiously and slowly," he advised. As his powerful hands nearly encircled me, a peculiar feeling of safety washed over me. An intimacy I hadn't had in years washed over me as a result of this young man's protectiveness. The fireplace cast a pleasant orange light across the house as we stepped inside. I was immediately at ease as the space was warmed by the crackling fire and the warmth it exuded. I was motioned by Taylor to lie down, and he hurriedly spread a blanket on the floor. He advised finding a more comfortable posture to relax your back, his expression softening as he spoke. To ease those muscles, I also brought some cream. I dove in, savoring the comforting embrace while Taylor warmed the cream by rubbing it between his palms after squeezing it into his hand. I gasped uncontrollably as his hands landed on my shoulder for the first time. "Calm down," he whispered. "You'll be all right now." Something was shifting, though, with each touch. In addition to the obvious physical benefits, his hands were also reawakening long-repressed feelings within me. My mind was both calmed and jumbled as his fingers traced over my back. The physical and emotional depths were both enhanced by Taylor's deliberate touch. He continued in a way that made me pay attention. His voice was warm and inviting. "It's no surprise your muscles are so taut. The garden and the chores are becoming too much for you, Nora. You must remember to prioritize your own needs." Without the garden, which serves as my therapy, I attempted to express to Taylor how I feel. Then he cut me off, his touch becoming somewhat gentler. "I know," he said. "However, the garden isn't enough. You also need people who genuinely care about you." Even more than the fire, his words warmed me and unnerved me at the same time. I was confused about what he meant, or perhaps I was, but I still refused to accept it. Just then, he continued massaging my back by bringing his hands down a little lower. Even while his gentle touch eased the knots, it was actually causing a new kind of knot on the inside. It was both comforting and unsettling to be thus close to him. At last, I mustered up the courage to say it. "Taylor," albeit my voice was very unsteady. "Your assistance is greatly appreciated, however. Everything will be all right, I know." He just spoke more slowly this time. "No need to worry, Nora." His remarks seemed to be more than just sound advice. He was drawing nearer and nearer with each passing second, like the fire's flames. Slowly, Taylor's fingers traced a path down my spine. A peculiar feeling of unease started to grip me as he eased every muscle in my body. Slowly but surely, his warmth sank deeper. My thoughts began to wander at that same instant, and an inner conflict was established. "Nora," I tried to tell myself to be calm, but I just couldn't. My heart began to race as his gentle palms drew nearer to my shoulders. The closeness of Taylor and the distance that had been established over the years formed an opposing pair. "Nora, he is your step-nephew," an inner voice yelled out at me quite suddenly. "What you're doing is wrong." The room was bathed in a cozy glow from the fireplace, but the heat eventually grew intolerable. My gaze was immediately drawn to Taylor as I watched him dab his forehead with a tissue. Out of nowhere, he undid his shirt by pulling up the bottom. The sun-kissed, muscular man virtually appeared to glow in the firelight, resembling a sculpture. What I felt at that second is difficult to put into words. For a long time I hadn't had a sense of intimacy like this. He let his shirt fall to the floor in protest, stating that the intense heat from the fire was too much. I was paralyzed by the intensity of his stare, even if his tone was nonchalant. His gaze locked with mine. "Nora, you're getting really hot too," he whispered with a confident tone. "Your misery will intensify if you persist in wearing that garment. I can lend you a hand." Words refused to come out of my mouth. I considered resisting, but the combination of the scorching heat and perspiration on my skin was too much. Then I nodded slowly. Next to me, Taylor knelt and grabbed the bottom of my shirt. His gentle, warm hands were pressing on my flesh. There was a heat rather than cold in the touch that made me shudder. With great care, he lifted my shirt, ran his fingers through my hair, and then removed it, setting it aside. There was an immediate thickening of the space between us. For an instant, he stared at me intently before swiftly averting his gaze. I was already in a state of complete disarray before I even laid eyes on his face. "Hey Nora." "My voice is deeper and softer than before," Taylor stated. "Is it better now?" "I believe so," I said, my voice quivering. The tempest within me was too great for my words to contain. Not only was it hot, but I could feel the comforting embrace of Taylor's presence as well. With a gesture of his hand, he invited her to come on. "We should go sit on the couch because this is very unpleasant for you." I grasped his hand. I hadn't felt that kind of electricity in years until our fingertips met. His powerful arms briefly stabilized me as he assisted me to my feet. I started to feel my concerns fading away as Taylor's protective instincts seemed so obvious and natural. He carefully lowered me onto the couch as soon as we arrived. Even though he made sure there was plenty room between us, he promptly sat down next to me. Still, nothing had changed about the tense atmosphere in the room. It was so difficult, if not impossible, to articulate the wordless thing that existed between us. His intense stare made it difficult for me to control my emotions, so I battled to keep them in check. But it was obvious of one thing. The gravity of our emotions was nearly impossible to ignore tonight. The crackle of the fire broke the hushed stillness as we took our seats. I could practically feel my heart pounding in my chest. The very fact that Taylor was sitting next to me, his breath, his presence, was having an effect on me. Being this near to him evoked a mix of unease and calmness in me. For an instant I cocked my head, and then our gazes locked. Something deeper, perhaps curiosity, was in his eyes. His deep, penetrating, yet simultaneously gentle gaze were impossible to turn away from in that intimate proximity. Everything seemed to come to a halt at that very moment. Taylor cautiously extended his hand toward mine. I got a chill when his fingers made contact with mine. Even though he wasn't speaking, the stillness said a great deal. In that split second, his eyes remained fixed on my lips, and my world shifted. He drew nearer to me, but cautiously. I could feel the warmth of his breath on my skin because he was so near. My internal monologue came to a halt. No longer could one say anything was correct. Only Taylor's gaze and physical proximity to me existed at that precise time. With my eyes closed, I leaned in little toward him. It seemed as though time stood still as our lips touched. The initial contact was mild, exploratory, and delicate. But in the span of a few seconds, that mildness transformed into something far more strenuous. Everything about him, his warmth, his breath, the texture of his lips, felt surreal. In that instant, all of my pent-up feelings of isolation, terror, and yearning seemed to be blending with his. I wasn't only kissing them. It was the release of pent-up feelings, goals, and perhaps even a secret connection that had been building up for a long time. His fingers delicately traced my cheeks as our kiss intensified. As soon as I felt the heat of his skin on my hands, I firmly grasped his shoulders. In the end, we separated simultaneously. We were both gasping for air as our gazes locked, yet the connection we had was palpable. Is anything to be said? Though I had my doubts, one thing was very evident. After tonight, our relationship would change forever. I felt a sudden pang of exhaustion after the kiss. It seemed like my heart was going to explode from all the hammering. Looking into Taylor's eyes revealed a mix of curiosity and intense need. My thoughts came to a halt at that very second. At this point, the choices were being made by my heart and my body. "Taylor," I whispered, my voice quivering but my emotions crystal clear. "Indeed, I desire you. Your presence is what I desire." Something inside of me snapped as soon as those words escaped my mouth. It was as if all the years of isolation and terror I'd endured vanished into thin air. To be present in this very moment with him was all that counted. After a moment of shock, Taylor's expression gradually turned into a smile. He seemed as warm as the air around me, and it showed in his eyes. "I want you too, Nora," he whispered with a mix of gentleness and determination. "I've been attempting to control myself, but I just can't. Your presence is what I desire. I long to be in your presence." Every one of his words touched my heart as they swept through me like a tsunami. As he drew nearer to me again, Taylor delicately caressed my face in his palms. Nobody was hesitating this time. Our desires were crystal clear to each other. The intensity of our emotions was indescribable when our lips met once more. I was at a crossroads at this very moment. Taylor's company, friendliness, and remarks. I had no intention of stopping anything at this point, despite my misgivings. Everything had continued. Unabated. I had surrendered entirely to the current of my emotions. Taylor was sleeping next to me while we were both breathless and entangled in each other, with only a thin sheet covering us. Looking up at the ceiling, I spotted our shirts and pants spread over the floor, and a faint smile crept across my face. What a weird night it was. Seemed surreal. With that mesmerizing smile lingering on his face, Taylor pivoted to confront me. His palm rests softly on my cheek, and his thumb brushes across my lips for an instant. With a low, gentle voice, he spoke to Nora. I would give anything to relive this moment. With a voice brimming with appreciation, I turned to him, my heart weighed down by the conflicting feelings that were still circulating within me. Yours faithfully, Taylor. I can't remember the last time I felt so isolated. On the other hand, you? Considering how young, dashing, and massive you are? This is great. The genuine gratitude and appreciation in my eyes was not something I intended to conceal. A lovely smile, characteristic of Taylor, swept across his face as his lips curled upward. What a stunning woman you are, Nora. He spoke. And I'm not merely referring to your physical attractiveness. Being in your presence is an entirely new sensation. The genuineness, the warmth, the entirety of it. When I'm around you, I feel better about who I am. I was unable to divert my gaze from his. What he said. His hand. I wanted to permanently imprint this night on my memory, since everything was so intense and genuine. Truthfully, I told Taylor I needed you. Plus you showed up. Everything was perfect. Taylor brushed his fingertips over the sheet's edges while smiling faintly. Nora, you can count on my frequent visits. Going forward, I will always be available to help you. His voice betrayed his resolve and honesty as he spoke. Just wanted to drop over and say hi too. Simply so you can have these times. A new chapter in my life seemed to be beginning at that very moment. I was beginning to feel the weight and isolation of my past slipping away. Having Taylor as my companion brought me an overwhelming feeling of tranquility and trust. I drew forward to his comforting embrace after closing my eyes and taking a deep breath. For me, this night was just the start. More important than everything else were the initial steps of a new adventure, and the knowledge that I was no longer alone. I pray my tale was enjoyable to you. I am overjoyed to tell you about this adventure because it was very thrilling. Remember to subscribe if you would like to hear more stories similar to this. By enabling alerts, you can stay up to date with the release of new episodes. What motivates me the most is hearing your thoughts and feelings. Thus your likes and comments are also very meaningful to me. Thanks to you, I am able to write more. Please meet again in the future story. I am really grateful.